Alright, welcome mechanical engineering students. In this example exercise, we will create this part known as a ratchet wheel. And on the front view here, we see a two-dimensional sketch and a few items to point out. We see that there are 6 teeth, each containing a 1/2 millimeter fillet at the sort of the top of the tooth, if you will. And we notice that since we have 6 teeth, it's safe to assume that every 60 degrees we have another tooth. So what we're saying is this angle here between this line and likely this line, that angle is 60 degrees. Looking at the section view, we see that the overall thickness is 6 millimeters, and there's this little bump or protrusion on the back side, which you see here, which sticks out 1 millimeter. And on the front side, we also see this counter bore and the hole going all the way through. So let's get into Inventor and create this part straight away. Okay, so we're in Inventor, and let's go ahead and make sure that our units are in millimeters, something you definitely want to take care of each and every time you begin work. So hit OK, sketch, 2D sketch, let's pick the XY plane. And anytime you bring up a sketch, you see sort of this crosshair show up, or this vertical and horizontal line, and right in the middle is sort of the overall origin of the sketch. And it's not an absolute, but it's generally good practice to begin your parts at the origin. So what we're going to do is create a couple of circles. One of them is going to be a 32 millimeter circle, I believe. And the other one is going to be 40 millimeters. Okay, now what I'm going to do is up here I'm going to select construction, and I'm going to pick or create a few construction lines to act as reference axes. So I want to create another line out here, and let's make sure that we set the 60 degrees between them. Okay. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is create a line segment that runs between the two circles as shown. Oops, let's make sure we turn off construction. And you can see we get the solid line. And then to create the profile of the tooth, I'm going to use the arc command. We're going to use the 3-point arc. So up here at the 12 o'clock position of the inner circle, select this point, and then bring the cursor up to the top of the outer circle at this location shown here. Left click, and just sort of move your mouse maybe up and to the left. And what we need to do now is give this a 23 millimeter dimension per the drawing. Okay, and then what I like to do now is create the fillet, the 1/2 millimeter fillet that we discussed earlier. So click on the fillet command, type in 0.5 for 1/2 millimeter, and select your arc. And then you can see when you bring the mouse down to this line, it sort of takes a guess, and that looks correct for the fillet. Okay, so we're nearly done, and what I'm going to do now is subtract off some of the features that I don't need. So I'm going to use the trim command, and I can trim away this line, and I can also trim away all of the outer circle as shown here. Whoops. Oh, I have a dimension there, so I may not be able to trim it. Let me see if I can just delete this circle. Okay. Alright, so I just deleted that outer circle, and you can see what's left is essentially the profile of the tooth. Now, what you could do is repeat what we just discussed and essentially draw it 5 more times, but that's cumbersome. It leaves you open to making some mistakes or inconsistencies. So there's a quick way around this, and it's known as creating a pattern. So come up to pattern and you see circular. Click on circular, and let's select geometry here. and we're going to pick a few lines. So we're going to pick the arc, we're going to pick the fillet, and then we need to pick this straight line segment here. And often when you have features on top of one another, it's difficult to select them. So what you might have to do is just let the cursor hover there for a second, and a menu will show up. And I need to pick the second one here. Okay. And now what I need to do is select the axis for the pattern. And that happens to be, the axis for the pattern is sort of coming out of your screen, and it runs from the middle, the dead center of the part. So I'm going to select axis and then pick the middle point there, and you can see what happened. Inventor essentially generated a preview of all of the teeth. That looks correct. Let's click OK. Alright, so the next thing we can do now is create an extrusion of the part that's going to be 6 millimeters in thickness. So 3D model, extrude, and let's pick 6. And now what I'm going to do is I like to just hold the shift key down, and I'm going to select all of the features I wish to extrude. I suppose you don't even have to click select, but you can see we've generated our part, hit OK, and here you go. So you can see that we're basically finished. We simply have to add in a few extra features. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the 6 millimeter hole that goes all the way through, and then we'll create the counterbore and then the protrusion on the back side. So let's create that hole. So click on circle, and then anytime, again, you generate a two-dimensional sketch, you need to select a sketch plane, and we'll select this front face here. So let's create our circle. It's a 6 millimeter circle. Let's go to 3D model, extrude, and we're going to make sure we select the cut command, and it goes all the way through, and as long as this is set to at least 6 millimeters, we'll create our hole. Now we need to create that counterbore, which is a 12 millimeter diameter. Again, select the front face. We pick our circle. Let's dimension it. It must be 12 millimeters. 3D model, extrude, and our cut distance is only going to be 1, but let's make sure we select cut first down here. So select cut, 1, and that looks correct. Hit OK, and you can see that we did in fact create our little counterbore there. Now we have to create the little protrusion sticking out 1 millimeter on this face, and it's also a 12 millimeter hole. So what we can do is create circle, use this face, and we're going to, there's our circle, and what we're going to do is go to 3D model, extrude, and we want to make sure we do a Boolean 1 millimeter. Now, what we can do is, because we just want to essentially extrude this annular region, this donut-looking region you see here, that's highlighted in pink. So if I pick that, make sure that's 1, that completes the exercise. So I suppose the final thing we can do is, if you look at our original part drawing, it had that nice fire engine red. What Inventor likes to do, the default setting is always this kind of battleship gray. But if you want to give it a bit more of a unique appearance, come up here to Appearance Browser, and let's try to find that color. It looks like this red color here, dark red. And this is always a little tricky. And I think what you have to do is select the part and then click on the color, and that should do it. So that concludes today's exercise. So we've created our ratchet wheel. It has this nice red color. We've added this little protrusion, and then we can see the other features shown on this side. And perhaps the most interesting part of this exercise was the use of the pattern command to generate the teeth. So I hope you found today's exercise to be helpful and instructive. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.